Welcome to tonight's live town hall with Mayor Patrick Brown. Your host is Michael A. Charbon.
Good evening, Brampton, and welcome to Live Town Hall with the mayor of the ninth largest city in Canada, Mr. Patrick Brown. My name is Michael A. Charbon, and glad to be with you here in this sunny Ontario evening. We hope that you'll interact with us and engage. You can reach us at citystudio.ca/Ask Brown. That's citystudio.ca/Ask Brown. During the duration of this program, you can post your comments, and in the last 10 minutes of our show, we're going to sit there and take your questions and ask the mayor what's on your mind. This really is an excellent opportunity for you to interact with the mayor, ask about things that are affecting you, your neighborhood, your household, your community, and where things are going. So let's welcome the man of the hour, the mayor of the ninth largest city in Canada, Mayor Patrick Brown. Happy season to you and Merry Christmas, Mayor Brown. How are you?
Merry Christmas, happy holidays. You said a sunny evening. I don't know where you are, Michael, but it's not sunny outside right now.
I actually meant to say snowy, but I just hate to say the word snow. So I stand corrected. It is definitely an evening, but it is snowy. It's as cold up there for you as it would be anywhere else in Ontario, I think. So I just wanted to make clear to the folks who are watching, you and I have not had the opportunity to talk. You don't know about the questions that I'm going to ask you. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Perfect. So first of all, it's Domestic Violence Awareness Month. I was wondering if you could just shed a little bit of light, just a small comment on that, because we want to make note of that because it's an important issue in our community today.
Yeah, absolutely. And there is an active effort to create more awareness around the insidious nature of domestic violence. We've got some great organizations, whether it's Brave or the Zonta Club, that are doing advocacy campaigns right now in Peel Region. 16 days, it's a 16 days campaign where we're talking about why we need to do more when it comes to domestic violence. You know, on the front pages of newspapers, you hear about gun and gang violence, but you don't get the same attention to domestic violence. And if you ask the Peel Police, the number one source of calls, tragically, it's for intimate partner violence. It's domestic violence calls. And so it's a scourge in our society that we need to combat.
I think one of the other messages too, if you see something, say something. Never be afraid. If you see something, say something. And if you're in a situation and you need to reach out, there are lots of community services there for people. Don't be afraid. It's not the way it used to be. It used to be very quiet. And now we encourage women who are having a problem and need some assistance, need someone to talk to. Don't be afraid to reach out. All right, let's talk about budget. I mean, here we are in the Christmas season. It's all about budget, if you wish. You've got $794 million. That's the operating budget of Brampton, of which, ironically, someone sent me a note and said 58% of it is wages and staff, that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. Of the $794 million of your operating budget, there's a $328 million, which is the capital budget. We understand that you're looking to have a tax increase of about 2.8%. Of that 2.8%, 1.3 is going to go to the city and 1.5 is going to go to the region. So it's probably about a $145 hit per family. I think one of the things that Brampton always prided itself on was that it didn't need to raise taxes. I think in this day and age, we've faced the fact that it's time that we're going to have to pay a little bit of the piper. Where is a lot of this money going to? Where's the other 42% going to, for instance, in the city? What are some of the things that people should know about where the budget money is going?
So I would disagree with the premise that we have to raise taxes. I'm a big believer that we need to become tax competitive. So I will be advocating for a tax freeze this year. The last 3 years, our city staff have come with their requests, and council has deliberated on the request, and in the end come back with the tax freeze. So it's not unusual that there would be staff requests for additional spending, but I think it's council's job and the mayor's job to look at every new expense and really put it in the context of there are a lot of seniors on fixed incomes. There are families struggling to make ends meet. And we've been through a whirlwind with the pandemic, and any new cost, any new pressure on the backs of families in our community need to be justified. And, one of my larger concerns when I ran for mayor, Brampton had been going through tax increase after tax increase after tax increase. Literally for over a decade straight, we had significant tax increases every year. And then something changed, and we had a council that was focused on fiscal discipline. And for the last 3 years, we've had tax freezes. Well, as much as we've made progress, we're not there yet. I look at the tax rates in Mississauga, Vaughan, Halton, Oakville, all our neighbors, Caledon, every single geographical neighbor has lower taxes. And I'm out there pitching Brampton, trying to bring business and investment and jobs to our community. And one of the first things that potential investors look at are tax rates. And we need to play catch up. I want to see us be tax competitive. Actually, you look at the list of municipalities across the GTA, and I share.
What about tax incentives to bring business here? I mean, that's one of the things. Some would call it political bribery, which it is in a certain extent. But that tool, I must also say, it's absolutely refreshing to say that you're looking at not increasing. If there's a way to absorb that 2.8% potential increase in reductions of some of your costs, I mean, you would be a hero. So that's number one. But number two, what about incentivizing businesses to come through the use of tax?
So under the Municipal Act, we're not allowed to offer financial incentives to businesses. And so what we have to do is we need to create the fundamentals that are competitive. So on red tape, on the cost of doing business in our city, on taxation rates, we need to be competitive. I can't control hydro rates, which are provincially. I can't control income taxes, which are provincial and federal. But what we can control is the cost of doing business in our community. And so what this council has been focused on is try to create a better pitch. And in our pitch 3 years ago, that we had the slowest.
What about property taxes, though? Are you not able to utilize property taxes as a tool to entice business?
So we're not allowed to offer any financial incentive, but what we are allowed to showcase is our general tax rates across the city. And so it is a tool to show how we compare to other cities. And right now that pitch needs some refining. It's why we've been working on it over the last 3 years, trying to play catch up with Mississauga, Caledon, Vaughan, and Oakville. But we're making progress, but we're not there yet. And I have to say, Michael, when it comes to small businesses, at the end of the year, they watch their budgets. If there's funds available at the end of the year, they save it for the following year. Every dollar is watched in a very
well. If you're a small business today, you're in the most perilous situation that you've ever been, because big box stores and larger business.
Yeah, and Michael, what I find in government is the end of the year, you have significant percentages of the budget that are unspent. Usually you get to December 1st and there could be 10% of the budget, 20% of the budget that's not spent, and they go on a spending spree at the end of the year. And so, I'm trying to create a culture where if we find savings, that means that, we were good fiscal managers. We should be frugal. Frankly, I was upset if I looked at Brampton's books over the last 10 years, and there was a tendency that there'd be significant spending in the last 4 weeks of the year, which shows there was room to be more frugal. And at the end of the day, I will not accept Brampton having the highest taxes in the GTA. And I'm going to continue pushing for our community to be tax competitive, because I want to bring investment and jobs. I want to bring major industry to our city, and I have to create fundamentals which enable that pitch.
Well, I think if you can actually do that and not raise the taxes and find the savings, I think you would be a hero. There's always been that, how should one say, that political attitude that if there's any money left in the budget, you have to spend it this year because you won't get that budget next year. If you quell that fear, then we should be in a much better position. There are some who would say that the higher in debt we go, the more we're indebting future generations. How would you react to someone who would say
municipalities are not allowed to run debt in Ontario? So we're not allowed to run a deficit. And a lot of people don't know that municipalities are not allowed legally to run a deficit. I think that's a good thing. There are some mayors during COVID who are saying, can we have permission to run deficits. And no, if you look at the structural
Only
deficits,
the federal government can do that.
yeah, well, the provincial and federal governments can do so. And like now, provincially, they spend more on interest payments servicing their debt than they do on post-secondary education. And so you create this structural deficit that is difficult to escape. And so I don't want the right to run deficits municipally. And actually in Brampton, we've been very prudent with our savings. One thing you may not know about this council, but for the last 3 years in a row, we've made record contributions to our reserves. And reserves is sort of our rainy day fund. It's our savings account for future infrastructure. And this council has not only frozen taxes for the last 3 years, we've at the same time made record contributions to our savings account.
I encourage everybody who is watching, if you have a question for Mayor Patrick Brown or a comment, go to citystudio.ca/Ask Brown. The last 10 minutes of our show, we're going to interact with you and, put you as part of the engagement to ask Mayor Brown. Let's now go to hospitals. So when we talk about Peel Memorial, Pat Fortini, and you seconded it to have the levy to raise the money. And basically for the hospital, you raised $60 million. $40 million was used in phase one. There's $20 million left. As of late, there's been discussion to have an add-on. It's not really a second hospital. You're adding, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, about 250 beds to the existing proposal for Peel Memorial. There is $125 million still needed to push that through. You have $20 million left still from the phase two, which could be applied to that. That means there's a deficiency of about $105 million plus or minus. Plus, the community has to come up with a lot of the X-ray machines and the stuff for inside of the hospital. If you consider how the city council is going to pay for that, if you take it over a 10-year course or a 7-year course, that would have great implications in the amount of money that the taxpayer in Brampton would have to pay. Am I first of all, I just want you to check my figures. You're smiling. I probably said something wrong. So help me out here so that we can clarify this.
Well, I will clarify that. So the old Peel Memorial was decommissioned in 2006. So there is no hospital there. There's no H on the building. There's no beds there. There's no emergency department. It's just it's an urgent care clinic. And so we desperately needed a second hospital. And frankly, we're going to need a third hospital too. And so we were lobbying the provincial government to build a new hospital on the site of the old decommissioned Peel Memorial. When it was decommissioned in 2006, people thought they were going to agree to build a new hospital there. When they built Brampton Civic, it wasn't to get rid of the existing hospital. And so year after year, that announcement, which was expected to be made, didn't happen. And so with our lobbying, we managed to get the government to announce a new hospital on the site of the old hospital that was no longer there. And in front of it, they're going to build.
We just got you. You're just frozen here. Your last comment, Mayor Brown, if you can.
This giant new.
Sorry, Mayor Brown. Hold on a second. You just froze for a sec there. Yes. So go back to.
Can you hear me now?
Thought the replacement of the old hospital of a new hospital being built. That was the last thing that we heard. Sorry.
So the province actually put out the tender for it. So when you put out a tender, it makes it real. It's on the Infrastructure Ontario website. $1 billion, which is the largest investment in healthcare in Brampton history. There's going to be a full service emergency department, 24/7 care, 250 beds initially, then an additional 100. So larger than than many other hospitals. And so it's a huge step in the right direction. But the way provincial funding works today for any hospital, whether you're going to build a hospital in Windsor or Vaughan, which they are doing right now, they require a 10% local share. And the local community has to pay for all the equipment. So what Osler has estimated the local share to be is about $125 million. And how it's occurred in other areas in Windsor, in Vaughan, in Markham, who are all building or built hospitals recently, that cost was split between the regional government and the local government. And so on that basis, Brampton's responsibility would be $62 million. our council's been able to identify, we had the 20 million that's in the reserve account that was saved up from the former councils. And then we've identified an additional $40 million in unspent projects that were no longer warranted. And so we now have the funds available to us, and council is going to have a vote probably over the next week on whether to make that contribution to the hospital. But we have the capacity to make our hospital contribution without a hospital levy, because we have it in our bank account now. And rather than push this off to a future council and say this would be a levy collected over on the next term of council, we have the capacity to do it now, and I think we should do it now. I don't want us to delay.
I think there's lots of Bramptonians who would totally agree with you. I have a question from Darshan. Let's put that up fast for us. So how does Mayor Brown view Brampton's PC MPPs voting against the hospital in the city? And how does Mayor propose to engage or ensure that we get one? Did the MPPs, did they really vote against the hospital for Brampton? Is that a correct statement? I don't know if that really is.
Well, there's a lot of politics at Queen's Park, and the way it works, and Michael, I've been down there. The opposition party will do a motion. They'll say, we want a new hospital and the government is bad, and vote for this, and you will be voting for the government being horrible. And so they put sort of poison pills in motions to try to convince the government to vote against it. Listen, every MPP in Brampton wants a new hospital. I know for the NDP's perspective, this is an issue that they want to make some hay over. But
yep.
When we should criticize the government, I'll be the first to do it. That when we weren't getting our vaccines, I was all over the media criticizing Premier Ford. But when he announced $1 billion for our community, for the previous 15 years we haven't got a penny for a new hospital, and they give us $1 billion, there's no way to say that isn't good news. There's no way to play. There's no reason to play partisan politics with it. It's great news for the community, and I wish the previous governments had done that. This is 15 years overdue.
Well, like you said, there's a lot of politics that are going on in down there. Sandra asks that she's glad that there's a second hospital. What year and when do you think this will take place?
So right now, the construction is supposed to begin in 2023. And of course, the tendering process will reveal whether that can be done faster. I know in my conversations with the health minister and the premier, they said that they would love to get it started in 2022. I think right now the ministry is saying that that's not possible based on the timelines for the tendering. But where there's a will, there's a way, and I'd love to see shovels in the ground next year.
So one more thing about the tendering. In Europe, they've done a thing that if companies come in on budget and on time, there's a bonus. If companies come in before the time and under budget, there's even a greater bonus. Unfortunately, anytime a city or a province or a federal government gets involved in a large project like that, it goes off the rails and it becomes ballooned in horrible overages and expenses. Do you have any control in limiting that horrible aspect and instituting, I think, a more sensible European reward system for coming in on time, on budget?
Yeah, and Michael, that's a good idea, but it's not a municipal tender. It is run by Infrastructure Ontario. It's a provincial tender, and usually there are penalties if you don't come in on time. But if there was a way to create incentives for having the hospital built faster, whatever creative ways could be engaged to get that hospital open sooner, the better. I would welcome, but ultimately that would be a provincial decision. Okay,
one more quick question, and then we're going to go to the questions from our folks in Brampton. Again, it's citystudio.ca/Ask Brown. John Tory announced that on January 4th, the city office buildings are going to be repopulated. And there was also some talk today about Metropolitan Toronto Police. There's a bunch of them that were on unpaid leave. First of all, quick answer, because we want to get to the questions from the people who are watching. What is the status of Peel Regional Police and the unvaccinated officers? And are they getting unpaid leave? And second of all, are you or council intending to put out some kind of announcement or a mandate to bring everybody back to the city office buildings in January?
So Peel Region has not fired employees over their vaccination status. The decision at Peel Region was that if you were unvaccinated, which is a very small percentage of the workforce, that you'd have to do regular testing. I personally feel someone losing their employment over the vaccinations is a little bit too far. And we have a very collaborative relationship with our paramedics and our police officers. And we're working with them to, in a collaborative manner, encourage everyone to get vaccinated.
Is there a new police station happening in Northwestern Brampton?
Yeah, the police do plan. They've actually made that request to and purchase land where there'll be a new police station in the northwest of Brampton.
And final point, just before we punt to questions, are you inviting city employees back to the city hall and to city buildings in January, or are you still letting some of them work at home? Is there a formal reintroduction of our working staff at City Hall?
So what we're looking at is a hybrid approach in January for those that have some health condition that would be safer for them to be at home, that there'll be virtual options. But I want everyone back. I want us to get back on our feet as a city. And I should say, Michael, in fairness, the vast majority of city workers have been working physically on the job for the entire pandemic. If you look at city employees, Brampton transit operators, they were there throughout the pandemic facing high risk, bylaw officers, animal services. The vast majority of municipal workers are frontline essential workers. And so
that wasn't in any way a sly on anybody. I mean, it's a frontline workers and the city workers. It was just interesting that Tory made a big announcement, a big thing saying, we're bringing everybody back. I didn't know Brampton was going to do that. Okay, let's punt now. Let's go to some questions. Faj, put some of the questions up here. And we thank you all for asking. 16 police officers for road safety between Mississauga and Brampton at the cost of $2 million out of a $500 million police budget. It's too little, or should we triple the road safety officers? This is Ivan.
So, Ivan's got a fair question. You don't see a significant allocation of police officers when it comes to road safety. And tragically, the reason for that is there is too much activity. The police have to tier responses. And so the more serious criminal incidents that involve a threat to life, gun and gang activity, domestic violence, those are where police officers are going. And so the lower risk calls and speed traps, burglaries, car thefts, they don't have the same response times as one where there is an immediate threat to life. And so the police, a lot of people don't know this, but every day they have to tier their responses, and every day there'll be calls that don't get responded to simply because they don't have enough bodies. And so Chief Nish has to make strategic decisions of where to allocate officers. And so you don't see as many speed traps with officers simply because it would be taking them away from critical criminal investigations or police activity.
In Toronto, I don't know if you recall, in Toronto, when we were both younger, there used to be police officers on Harley Davidsons. I believe it was 12th Division down by the Horse Regiment. And their whole purpose was to traffic, accidents, speeders. All those people like to come onto those on-ramps and think that just because they put their blinker on that they're allowed to butt in front of you when you've waited in line. It's almost as if we need to bring back more just cops for traffic, because I tell you, driving in Peel sometimes is very frustrating because a blinker is an indicator. It's not a butt. Sorry.
One thing we are doing, knowing that we don't have the police staff, human resources to be able to create speed traps, we have brought in municipal speed enforcement cameras, and so in the community safety zones where there's a school or a park.
Actually, interesting you should bring that point up. I'm not trying to butt in here, but I want to keep it moving. We do have Surjit actually asked how much is saved from spending speed cameras and red light cameras?
So right now, the city doesn't make money off speed cameras. It pays for itself, and so it's not a revenue tool, but it has achieved its intended result. In the areas that we have put speed cameras, speeds are dramatically down. So we measure it, and before the speed camera was put in until after, speeds are down almost 10 kilometers. And so we're seeing significant change in behavior. And I'm not surprised. You put up a warning sign, people sort of ignore it. But if you hit them in their pocketbook, it changes behavior.
There was a woman who was frustrated of people speeding in her neighborhood, so she stood out with a hair dryer, and everybody was coming by thought the hair dryer was a speed camera. Very smart. Let's put up Rob's question. He says, why does tagging vehicles for overnight parking a bigger priority than actually stopping vehicles from parking over sidewalks and curbs? That's a little nitpicky question.
Yeah, so I would say we got a great bylaw department led by Paul Morrison. They get a lot of calls too, and so they too have to strategically allocate resources to the more egregious bylaw breaches. But I can pass that. I hadn't heard of that example. I will pass that on to Paul Morrison, our director of
well, the squeaky wheel gets the oil, right? I guess that's the way it is. So I encourage whomever is having that problem, continue to call the bylaw officers. And let's go to our next question. This is, I think it's Sue who wrote this one, right? Yeah, it's Sue. She's concerned about the lack of maintenance on sidewalks strewn with debris, overhanging branches that are impeding seniors and handicappers from being able to go through. That's another one of those things. I think if you don't know about it, you can't fix it, right?
Well, I'll tell you what, Sue, if you see that in your neighborhood, just email me the street where that is to patrick.brown@brampton.ca, and I will have it immediately cleaned up. So just next time you see that, take a photo, email it to me with the street address, patrick.brown@brampton.ca, and it will be attended to.
Perfect. Faz, do we have another question? Yeah, we do. Okay, this one's from Harp. He says, when we say $1 billion, is this the cost to get 250 beds? How does that compare to other hospitals that are being built in Canada, the cost per bed? That's a good question, and not to mention the land is already there. That's a great question. Interesting.
So building a hospital is expensive, and we've seen escalation in construction costs significantly over the last number of years. So it is more expensive to build hospitals, but we're going to have a state-of-the-art hospital with all the best new equipment, all the best new medical facilities. So we're excited about that. And I should add, Michael, this is in the context that not only is our city getting a new hospital, we're getting a medical school and a regional cancer center. So these are major wins on the healthcare front that are long overdue, and we should be excited about as a community.
So how can Bramptonians, final question to you, Mayor Brand, how can Bramptonians become more engaged in the budgetary process? How can they learn more than what's going on? I mean, there's a lot of people who post questions and make accusations, but the spirit in Brampton is to become involved, and you can definitely see that. So how would you instruct a Bramptonian who wishes to be more involved in the budget process or learn more about it? How can they do that?
Well, thank you for that question, and it's refreshing. The worst thing for a community is apathy. The best gift a community can have is engagement, to care about your city, to be involved, to participate. And the budget document affects everyone. So do participate. We have a regional budget process and a municipal budget process, and they're both live streamed. You can watch them, whether at peelregion.ca or at brampton.ca. And they're happening right now, literally for the next 2 weeks at both the Region of Peel and the City of Brampton. We are doing our budgets. We'd love to get your feedback. You can just watch. You can email me your suggestions or your local councillor. But if you want to come and you want to delegate, you want to make a deputation, you just email the clerk's office, peter.fay@brampton.ca, if you want to make a deputation and share your two thoughts. And quite often we have deputations where people will come forward and give their 2 cents, and councillors will be say, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I've seen it happen where a request from a deputation gets ratified and becomes part of the budget.
Yeah. Well, isn't that what everybody elects their official to do, is to represent themselves and have the opportunity to voice their opinion? Mayor Patrick Brown, the mayor of the 9th largest city in Canada and soon to be the 8th. We speak to Mayor Brown at the last Tuesday of every month. With Christmas coming on, the next time we are going to get together is Tuesday, December the 14th. At 8 o'clock. Mayor Brown, thank you very much for taking the time to meet with us tonight, and I appreciate your candor. My name is Michael A. Charbon, and for citystudios.ca/Ask Brown, we'd like to say thanks for tuning in. Leave your questions here if you wish, and we can always carry them over, and we'll see you on Tuesday, December the 14th. Thanks very much for watching, and have a wonderful and safe evening. Thanks for watching.
Oh!